Okay, I went ahead and hit start recording, so I can cut this or whatever. But
Yeah. Okay.
can you see me?
Yep. I can see you.
I look a little bit Amish today, dude. I cut off the mustache, so I only have like the bottom beard. So
Uh,
I'm a little bit more Amish today.
well, you're
So
looking good, man.
thank you. So yeah, I got some sun on the head this past weekend. I got out and got some sun, and
That's always dangerous.
yeah, the vitamin D3, man. You know, it's
Well,
dangerous
one place
stuff.
you don't want to burn is on the top of your head. I'll tell you that.
Well, yeah, I've been pretty well. Knock on wood here on this. Yeah, I've been pretty lucky to not have any scares along those lines. So, um, no, I remember I used to do photography for a concert we have here in this town every summer. And one year, I lost my hat within the first 2 hours of the concert, and literally the entire rest of that day and the entire next day, I was out there shooting on my camera, um, the concert, you know, recording everything, like in the middle of the sun beating down on me and everything. But
Oh no.
I got so dark that year, dude, that like, yeah, I could have been probably classified into another racial group. So,
I I used to tan really well, but I've been in computer rooms and fluorescent lit areas for so long now. I'm kind of fluorescent anymore.
yeah, I used to be the same way, but you know, ever since I moved to Kentucky, I sort of got out of all that. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Every year I say I'm going to get some sun this year, and I
yeah.
never do.
Well, that's the way I've been probably since I stopped doing photography for that concert. I do the same thing every year. I need to get out. I need to get some sun, and I
Yeah.
never do. It's been about 3 years, but finally this past weekend I got out and spent some time with some friends at their house and stuff, and it was cool. So.
Well, now I have another excuse. I'm spending all my spare time on my third floor here, getting my pantry and my grow room put together. Been doing that for months now. I feel like I started too late, but it's going pretty well though. I've got a lot of the basics covered now.
Well, let's sort of start there because I'm going to be posting this on my main channel.
Hmm.
Um, so a lot of the people who might already be following me on my channel, they've heard me talking about like food stores and food supplies and survival stuff and the water thing and a lot of the stuff we've talked about personally. Um, and I know, you know, since we've started talking again a couple months ago, why don't you sort of go ahead and just sort of refresh me and fill it in anybody who you know hasn't listened didn't listen to our last podcast. Fill them in on what you've done over the last
Yeah,
you know couple months.
yeah, sure. Well, I've been watching this all kind of go on a slow burn for quite a number of years now, and I started feeling a real sense of urgency about a year ago. I think it's a good thing that I did because here I am a year later, and if I thought I was just starting right now, I wouldn't have a whole lot of hope. I'd be looking to bug out and go find a quiet spot on the side of a mountain somewhere. But as it stands, I think I'm fairly well prepared for the moment. I look at it this way: if you look at the order of what you need to live, air is number one, right? Without that, you're dead a couple minutes.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I don't know how to prep for air unless you buy a gas mask, but I'm
Which
hoping things don't get to that
do
degree.
you have a gas mask?
No, I don't, but
Well, I do. I do. So,
well, I don't blame you because right now all bets are off, in my opinion.
I still have a gas mask from the days after we first worked together when I moved off to DC.
Is that right?
And there was in DC back in those days. That was like late '90s, early 2000 when a lot of people were protesting the World Bank
Yeah,
and the IMF and the International Monetary, you know, all that
yeah,
stuff. So I always in my work bag, you know, I'm dressed up in like a suit and a tie and everything, and but in my bag I had like a gas mask with an extra filter just in case,
I never knew that. That's funny.
just in
So,
case.
so next on the list, of course, is water. Without water, you've got what, a week maybe? After that, it's going to be really horrific, painful, ugly death. Dying of thirst is a really terrible, terrible thing.
Yeah, not to keep interrupting, but what was that old terminology? Is it like 4 hours, 4 days, 4 weeks. It's like food, water. No, it's air. It's like 4 minutes for air,
Yeah,
4 minutes or 4 days for water, and like 4 weeks for food. Some
yeah, that's about right.
the 4 4 4.
So not only do you have to have water, but it has to be potable. You know, you can't just drink any old water, or you may die from horrible dysentery or something ugly like
Dysentery,
that.
giardia,
But,
or whatever. Yeah.
and then of course there's food as well. And I look at it this way. Right now I'm just using bottled water, and I'm stocking up on bottled water because it's really easy. They've got big giant packs you can get for a couple dollars,
Right.
and I'm just storing those stacks of those. But I'm also at the same time I found plans for a do-it-yourself water distiller. I know a lot of people have issues with distilled water, but if you do a deep dive on that, you'll find distilled water is perfectly fine and actually pretty good for you. It does not leach minerals from your body. That is a myth.
Okay. Well, that's. Well, you probably remember me responding in one of our groups
Yeah.
about that, and what all I was trying to get across in that group is that if that's all you have is distilled water and nothing else, no food, no nothing, the distilled water, you'll still be hydrated, but you're not going to get the minerals and salt.
Well, here's the thing, though. Listen, you need to do a deep dive on this,
Okay,
or just
okay.
believe me, whatever you want. But
Well,
I know,
I'm willing to learn. So send me a
well,
link
I
or
know these
something.
things for facts now, and I don't care to debate right now.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
not the time and the place for debate.
Right,
I'll
right.
tell you what I believe and what I think is fact. Fact is, first of all, water does not leach minerals from your body. Secondly, you don't get minerals from water. The minerals that are in water are not in a form that can be absorbed by the human body.
Okay.
So you can just forget all issues about mineralization. Okay.
Hmm.
Distilled water is good for you because it removes almost all of the impurities. It becomes 100% water, and there's no other issues with it. So I found plans for a distiller. Basically, just takes a 5 gallon bucket and a coil of copper tubing, which comes in a compressed coil, and I just kind of stretched it out a little bit to be the size of the bucket, and kind of worked it a little bit because copper is very malleable, so it's easy to reshape it. And I got it to fit into that bucket. The next thing is you get a pressure cooker of a certain variety, and you can pop off the centerpiece of the top lid and put a fitting on there that you can get a plastic tubing
Right.
to run into your copper tubing.
It's basically equivalent to like literally like distilling alcohol. It's the
It
same
is. You
setup.
can distill alcohol with this contraption if you really want to, but
So, but it's a similar setup to like Prohibition era, like alcohol distillers. You're creating. You have like a fire, and you're like evaporating, and you're. I guess in that case, I guess on the alcohol side, you're literally distilling the water out, so you get more pure alcohol.
yeah. And what's
And
funny is that
what's
alcohol
left
actually
and
leaches
what's left
water from
over?
your body too.
What's that?
I said what's funny is alcohol, if you drink it, actually leaches water from your body.
Well,
Which is
yeah,
why you
yeah.
have to
Oh, well,
filter them out.
trust me, as an alcoholic, I know that
We all know about that stuff.
I'm very dehydrated the next day.
Yeah.
So
So those are two of the things that come into my mind about water. The other is I bought this little
well,
water
no, well,
tester.
let me back up here. Let me play devil's advocate just for a moment.
Okay.
So you see me on here, but you don't see the screen I have. But I pulled up a little thing on is distilled water really worse for you than normal water or whatever, and it talks a little bit about like the electrolytes, which is the salt and waters and stuff. Now, if totally distilled water, if that's all you drink, and you're not getting if you're not getting an adequate supply of sodium and salts from whatever other food you're eating, whether it's meat or any food that you have in your supply store, if you're not getting that separately, um, is you still need sodium. Will you at least agree with that? You still need sodium in your
Well, of
diet.
course.
You
Without
know.
sodium, the electrical systems in your body, including your
Okay.
brain, aren't going to work.
Okay, that's all I wanted. That's
Not going to function. Yeah.
that's the common ground I wanted to find with you on this topic. So
Yeah,
you still
sure. I
need
mean,
the
the body has to
sodium.
have salt and sodium, period. That's, of course, that's a
So
fact.
whether it's through, well, I mean, even the salt, if you do get salt, like say the bottled water, if you say you have like bottled water, like you were talking about, that still has some level of minerals and
Yeah.
sodium in it. Okay,
Yeah, it's not distilled. It's just plain old water. Some of it comes from springs and
spring
whatnot. But
water or whatever. Yeah.
yeah, and they may have minerals in it. But like I said, the mineralization of water is just not in a form that your body can absorb. That's just a fact.
Okay.
So let me move on just a little bit there.
Okay.
The other thing with water is I bought this little, I don't know, it's like $15 on Amazon, this little water tester that tests for solids residuals in your water to see how pure it is. It's fine. You can use that to gauge, a couple hundred points is fine. If it goes over 1,000, it's kind of like swamp water. You shouldn't really be drinking it, etc. If you do it with distilled water, you're going to get 0 or maybe 2.
So a thousand watt.
Well,
Is it like a part per million of something or?
yeah, parts per million, basically. It refers to the dissolved solids that are in water, what they purify water from,
Okay.
including minerals and all the good stuff, but the bad stuff as well. It's all measured by that, except for a certain group of things. So if you measure a 0 with those little water testers, that's great, but there still can be other types of things in there. But from what I understand,
Other undetectable agents.
yeah, not by those little meters. That's
Right.
right. They have a certain range of things that they'll detect. So a lot of people rely on those little detectors and go, "Oh, look, I got a 0 or I got a 5 in my water, and that's all I need to know." But there could be something else in there that might harm you. But from what I understand, an active carbon filter will nail the rest of those things. So if
Okay.
you really, really want to be absolutely sure and pure in your water, I mean, you don't have to go to this degree,
So
but it's easy enough to do.
if you
Then
had if you had the pure distilled water, that's the best
yeah,
water.
distilled water and then run it through an active carbon filter, and
Okay.
then you're guaranteed basically 100%
Because
pure.
because
Nothing.
even if you distill your water, it depends on what container you're putting it into. That container may have bacteria, and so
Yeah,
you still want to potentially either boil it or run it through another filter
yeah, and if you do boil it, don't put it into plastic containers until
because
after
of
it's
the
room temperature.
BPA's.
Because a lot of people are worried about the types of plastics that they can use. They've got ratings on the bottom and that little triangle. They'll have a number 1 through 7.
Yeah,
You really,
it's like the BPA, the plastic, the biphasal or whatever.
it refers to the type of plastic that container is made from. And the middle range, like 3 and 4, I think it is. I don't remember exactly, but everything else is okay to
All
use.
right.
But
I
the
mean,
problem is you can,
I have some bottled water here behind me that I bought back during the first lockdowns, and it's been sitting out here in my garage. It's so I would not drink that because it's been sitting in my garage through heat and cold
is
and
it sealed?
it's sealed. Yeah, the caps are still on it, but I probably still wouldn't drink it because of the. It's got like I said, it's gone through like 100-degree heat. It's gone through cold. It's gone through all the different environments sitting out here in my garage. So honestly, I probably wouldn't drink that water. I would probably I'd water my plants with it.
Well, if
But
it comes to a survival situation, you can drink that water, dude. Don't worry
well,
about it. It'll be
sure,
fine.
but I would still filter it or do something with it. Filter
That's
it
fine. Yeah, that's fine too.
just to
But with
get
the plastic
because
containers,
the
the only
whole
real issue with plastic containers is heating them up over maybe 110, 115 degrees.
right.
Then you can get particulates from the plastic leached into the water or the food.
And
But if you, that's great.
that's the microplastics they talk about, like the
Yeah,
BPA's and
yeah, exactly. But this is why I don't microwave anything plastic anymore ever.
right,
Even if
okay,
it says microwavable, I don't care. If it's
like
plastic, I don't put it in the microwave.
even if it's like Tupperware or
I
Microsoft.
don't care.
Okay.
If it's plastic, it does not go in my microwave.
Hmm.
It's glass only. I have ceramic bowls and things like that, or just glass bowls,
Yeah,
dishes, the usual types of glass dishes or whatever. That's fine. I don't use any plastics in the microwave ever. And
okay.
I don't put food that's hot into a plastic storage container either.
Well, that leads us into another conspiracy. I mean, just microwaving food alone, you're irradiating it. So
Yeah.
you're irradiating your food. No, I mean, let's not get into that. So
Well, I don't think there's real issues with that because our family got one of the first microwaves that ever came out on the market. It was by Amana.
yeah,
And we had that microwave for probably 15 years. It was really solid, well built.
And
And
you're
I've had
still alive.
microwave phones since I was like 8 years old.
You're still
Yeah.
alive. Yeah. So no, I
And I'm
agree.
still here, and I have no health concerns at all.
I mean, just to sort of fill people in on microwave, since I'm a ham radio guy and everything. All a microwave is it's a radio transmitter that operates in the 2.4 to 2.5 gigahertz range,
Yep.
and all it does is just like any antenna. I mean, at any frequency, it transmits a radio wave, and it causes particles. I mean, obviously a microwave. If you put something dry in the microwave, say you put a rock, if you put
Yeah, it acts on the moisture, basically.
yes, it's moisture. So if you put a rock in the microwave, the rock's not going to get hot because there's no moisture in it.
Yep, right.
So it works on the moisture. It causes the moisture particles to vibrate. The vibration causes friction, which causes heat, which heats your food.
Yep.
That's all it is. And then when it turns off, there's no more radio waves. There's no radiation. There's nothing negative
Yeah, I
in your
remember I used to
food.
see there was a certain member of our family that used to open the microwave after it was done and like stand back in case there was stuff, like microwaves still floating around and
Right.
radiating out. It was like they were trying to air it out of the microwave.
Now, when the microwave turns off, it's like pulling the plug on a light bulb.
Yeah,
It's off.
it's off. It's done.
It's off.
Yeah, no more worries. So that's kind of my thing with water. Food, I went around with food because there's so many different issues. Basically, I'm talking about long-term storage because I'm prepping for worst-case scenario.
Right.
This could be anything from a major bump in the road to like some serious survival type thing where there's gangs of people roving the street trying to take your food.
Like in the movie The Road with
Yeah,
Viggo
so-
Mortensen. Yeah.
I don't know how bad it's going to get, and it'll be different in different areas.
Or what's that other good movie with what's
Don't
it-
say Mad Max.
No, well, Mad Max is really good too, but no,
Oh, yeah.
the one with Denzel Washington, The Book of Eli. Have you ever seen
Oh,
that?
I saw it once a long time ago. It's probably worth a rewatch. At
Yeah,
this point.
a lot of well, again, I'm not trying to get off on too many tangents,
Yeah.
but the Book of Eli is, and actually a lot of other videos that I've watched from the past that talk about this type of thing. A lot of those are becoming very pertinent these days.
Yeah.
With what's happening, with the global supply chain breakdown, and I've even posted here on my channel. Like if people go back on my channel here, they'll find a video from right around the time of the lockdowns where I'm talking to a guy named Michael Yon, Y-O-N is his last name. He was big. He's an American guy. He's an American like photojournalist. He was embedded in Iraq back in like the 90s and early 2000s, during the Gulf War. And after that, he disembedded and he went back to his normal life and everything. He moved to Indonesia for a while, and then he covered the Hong Kong riots right before the COVID. And I followed him a lot, and he started doing podcasts, like hour or two long podcasts. I posted a message on his Facebook, and he read it live on the air, and I'm going to insert it here right now.
Dennis Clayton said, "The U.S. has depended too long on global supply chain stability. Now we're starting to learn our lesson." Yeah, that first sentence you just put there says 10 books full. The U.S. has depended too long on global supply chain stability. You didn't even need to say another word. That says everything that's going to make huge effects on the United States here soon.
I'll sort of read it verbatim. The U.S. has depended upon supply chain stability for too long, and now we're learning our lesson.
Yeah. Globalization is going to turn and bite us in the ass. It already has.
And then, as he just said in the video that just played, he pretty much says that's all you needed to say. You didn't even need to say anything else. That first sentence you said, that's everything.
Kind of covers it a lot. It's a
It
big
covers
umbrella.
like
I'll
it
say
covers
one
the
thing on the movie
microchips.
point.
It
I
covers.
just saw yesterday or this afternoon, somebody posted something on one of the apps that I use. It said something about idiocracy. Have you ever seen that? And I chimed in, which I don't usually do, but it kind of struck a nerve because when I first watched that show, when it first came out back when, it was funny, of course, it was hilarious, but
Right.
it also, it disturbed me on a deep level
Because it was so
to a certain
true.
extent. And I didn't really get why. I just thought, I mean, it really truly disturbed me to a small degree. But here, all these years later, I know exactly why. And if anybody doesn't know what I'm talking about, go watch Idiocracy.
Yeah, it's like when they're like feeding the plants or whatever, they would give it
Gatorade.
like they would give it the what's the drink called?
Gatorade.
No, it wasn't called Gatorade. They called it like something
Well,
else.
of course they called it something else, but that's what they were using
But yeah,
to water and fertilize their plants.
Yeah, they're like
It has
Gatorade.
everything you need. It has everything a plant needs.
Yeah, I'm gonna insert that clip here too.
I'm pretty sure what's killing the crops is this Brondo stuff.
The Brondo's got what plants crave. It's got electrolytes.
So wait a minute. What you're saying is that you want us to put water on the crops.
Yes.
Water. Like out the toilet?
Well, I mean, it doesn't have to be out of the toilet, but yeah, that's the idea.
But Brondo's got what plants crave.
It's got electrolytes.
Okay, look. The plants aren't growing, so I'm pretty sure that the Brondo's not working. Now, I'm no botanist, but I do know that if you put water on plants, they grow.
Oh, well, I've never seen no plants grow out of no toilet.
Hey, that's good. You sure you ain't the smartest guy in the world?
Yeah.
Okay, look, you want to solve this problem. I want to get my pardon, so why don't we just try it, okay? And not worry about what plants crave.
Brondo's got what plants crave.
Yeah, it's got electrolytes.
What are electrolytes? Do you even know?
It's what they use to make Brondo.
Yeah, but why did they use them to make Brondo?
Because Brondo's got electrolytes.
Like, oh my God.
But but it's like yeah, it has everything it needs. It has electrolytes. That's what plants need.
And
know?
all their crops turned into dust bowls, and they couldn't figure out why.
But
right?
but then the guy that was in suspended animation came out of the cryo tube or whatever. He's like, just put toilet water on the plants.
Yeah, what are you talking about?
Just put any water. Just any water's fine. You know.
Pretty much.
But people get so stupid. And then I was actually, when I was out at my local pub the other night, we were talking about that movie Interstellar with Matthew McConaughey.
I haven't seen it.
It's a great movie. It came out in like 2013, 14, 15 maybe. But it's a space movie, and it got rave reviews from all the astrophysicists like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Brian Cox from England and everything. But the main thing in that movie was the main scene that I remember, that I'm talking about this topic of idiocracy, is that he got called into like a parent conference with his kids' teachers, and they said, "You're teaching your kid about the moon landings back in the 1960s. You know that's been debunked. You know, it's like flat Earth. You know, and like, but that movie takes place like 60 years from now, so like 2080. You know, it's taken place in that time frame, and that's what I see. You know, it's like idiocracy.
Yeah.
In 60 years from now, there's going to be teachers and educators and principals and superintendents of schools who are saying that the moon landings were faked. You shouldn't be teaching your kids that because that's the old textbooks. We've rewritten those textbooks. The Earth is now flat. The astronauts never landed on the moon.
Right.
I mean, what the heck, dude?
Like everything's faked, right? Just listen to the media. They'll tell you the truth.
And that's scary, man. It's so scary.
That's the problem for not vetting things yourself and actually using your brain.
Ugh.
Just listen to what you're told. Okay, let's get back to the food thing.
Okay.
Man.
Yeah.
I want to mention the issues that I wrestled with, and I finally came to the conclusion. I actually reversed my decision. I didn't want to have much canned food. I wanted to have dry foods that I vacuum packed.
Okay.
I use oxygen absorbers, and I have a little vacuum sealer for bagging food and sealing it. And I wanted to grow food indoors.
No, explain why not canned food.
Well, that's the thing. I also wanted to grow indoors so I would have fresh produce, right?
Right.
There are so many issues with growing indoors, not the least of which is what happens when the power goes out. Everything dies. You're done. It's all gone.
Right.
And the vacuum pack, it can become like the bags can actually take air into them, and the vacuum seal may not last. You may have rodents that can get into them and chew into them. These sorts of things are all issues. But canned food, you don't have any of those issues. You just store the cans, store them. You don't even have to cook them because most of those canned things they're all cooked. They're ready to go. Yeah, they've got preservatives and all that kind of thing. But if you're talking about a true survival situation, canned goods are going to do good for you. So now I've kind of done a reversal, and I'm starting to stock up on canned goods. I do have a lot of vacuum packed.
Okay, so you are okay with canned goods.
And now, yes, because I started realizing all the issues that I have with the vacuum packs and with growing indoors. I didn't want to grow outdoors for a variety of reasons: rodents, people stealing your food.
In a survival situation, it becomes obvious. Like if you're trying to be stealth, it becomes obvious if you have a garden in your backyard.
Right, that's the first thing people are going to steal from you, right?
Right.
And not only that, it's seasonal, so you have to figure out how to store all of that. You get a harvest once, maybe twice a year, and then you have to learn how to store it. Have you ever canned food?
Well, I haven't. My dad, he cooks down strawberry preserves at the right around this time of every year.
It's a bitch.
Yeah, it's a bitch, but he, even with like maybe 2 or 3 gallons of strawberries, he cooks down enough to like get us through the whole year.
Is that right?
And it's really frickin' good. It's sweet. It has the sugars. It has nutrients. It's still really good stuff.
Yeah, like my grandfather used to make his own applesauce. Every year. Yeah. He had a big green apple tree, and he made tons of applesauce. It was so good, you can't believe it. Mm-hmm. But anyway, that was the issues that I came up with. So now I'm doing just a combination of things. I'm growing indoors. I'm also vacuum packing food. I'm also buying canned goods.
So vacuum packing like non-perishables, like rice and pasta.
Yeah, all dry goods. White rice. Don't try to long-term store long-grained rices because they have oils in them and they can go rancid even if they're vacuum packed.
That's good to know.
Only.
So you want to get more of the refined stuff that's been processed a little bit?
Well, just white rice, just plain white rice.
Well,
I bought 20-pound bag of white rice.
But the typical white rice is, and again, a lot of people don't like refined products or whatever, but
well, listen, we're talking about life or death here.
Well,
there are some things that I just don't give a shit about in that situation. Like I said, canned goods are full of preservatives. Well, I'm going to deal with that in a life or death situation.
Well, granted, I guess what I'm getting at is that if you get like an all natural organic rice of some kind, it may have those natural oils that can go rancid. Whereas if you get like a refined rice, it has those oils cooked out of it.
Well, I'm not sure about that because the white rice, my understanding is, just doesn't have that issue.
Okay.
It's the sheathing around the rice.
Right. No, I've heard that. I've heard that. Yeah.
So, and then also things like I bought 4 different kinds of dried beans. Big bulk bags of dried beans. I bought.
And that's more for the protein and.
Yep, dried lentils, dried split peas.
Okay.
Even like mashed potato flakes. Mm-hmm. Got those. Flour. I learned how to vacuum pack flour without getting it all up into my vacuum sealer. You use little lunch bags.
I was just talking with a friend tonight about the flaked mashed potatoes, like the Idaho and ones that you can get at the store for 99 cents. I mean, they're still potatoes.
Oh yeah,
there's
got a lot of good stuff in there,
and they taste really freaking good too.
Yeah.
You get a cup of water, and you pour it in, and you mix it up, and you got a meal.
And you have food.
Yeah, you got a whole meal right there.
It's a miracle.
But then one thing I told him is make sure you have your seasonings. Seasonings are important.
Yep. Don't vacuum pack salt. There's a tip for you.
Especially with with the white rice you talked about. Some people are doing like pastas and dropping noodles, but always make sure you have your seasonings. You want it to taste good.
Yep. So, I have a mixed seasoning that I've stored, and I also have just plain salt, in big containers of salt. But you can use mason jars for those sorts of things. I bought, if anybody doesn't know, the Church of Latter-day Saints, say what you will, I don't care. Those are the master preppers of the universe right there.
Well,
if you don't know, those people are all about the prep. Get on their website and buy oxygen absorbers.
Well, they stuck their genealogy database inside of a mountain in Utah.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you, they know what they're doing with this food. You can buy in bulk. Now, if you're a member of the church, there's a lot of bigger bulk things that you can get from them, but anybody can buy all the standard things. And you can get those oxygen absorbers for cheap.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
you can use mason jars. Like this is how I store my pasta because it wasn't working in the vacuum seal.
So
So
that's a little bit of a discussion I had with another friend earlier today. When it comes to the oxygen absorbers, now um, are those a special thing or no? I've heard I heard somewhere that like the hand warmers that you use in the winter. I heard that's the same technology behind the oxygen absorbers, but then somebody also mentioned those little silicone packets you get like in your box of shoes.
no, silicone packets are demoisturizers. They're not
Okay.
oxygen absorbers. Do
Okay.
not use them.
So have you heard about the hand warmers and oxygen absorbers?
No, I haven't.
Okay, never mind. Okay.
But these you can get. It's a flat pack that's vacuum sealed in clear plastic,
Right.
and there are like
And you
a few hundred of them in there for like $5 or $10 or whatever.
and you rip it open and break them and stuff and
They're just little packs. You don't really have to break them. They're just little square packs, about an inch square.
okay.
And you can get bigger ones. Like if you have 5-gallon buckets, you can get the bigger ones to use for things like that. But I got mine just for mason jars, and I took my pasta because it wouldn't seal right. So I stopped doing the vacuum seal for pasta. I broke it in half, stuffed it into mason jars, and then I tossed the oxygen absorber in there and screwed the lid on. After a couple minutes, that lid will pop. You know, you'll hear and then you know it's sealed.
Well, this is my ammo container that I talked about earlier.
Is that well? It's not full, right?
No,
You
it's pretty full. There's not much space left in it, but I didn't use the oxygen absorber, but I did put in like the demoisturizer, the silicone.
Yeah.
But like I said, like I think I mentioned early in this this call that that I opened it about 18 months later, and everything was still fresh. Even though it's been sitting out in the heat and the cold and through the seasons and everything, it's still fresh.
Nice.
But that's been about 8 months now. So, for me right now, since everything's still relatively okay in the world, this was more of a test for me than anything. So, I'm gonna probably open it again here in another video I post in the next few days. I'm gonna open it again and see if there's any mold or any odd smells or off smells or anything. And then if there are, then I'm going to toss it all out except the spam. The spam's pretty sealed. And the jars. I have some jars and cans. I'll probably keep those, but I'll probably throw out like the potatoes and the pasta and the rice, and then go buy new ones from the dollar store.
Well, here's a couple more tips on this long-term food storage. You can use oxygen absorbers. Like I said, they're best for mason jars. If you're vacuum packing your food, you don't really need oxygen absorbers because it will suck all the air out. And all that would be left behind in either case is maybe some nitrogen, which isn't harmful to food.
Yeah.
Bacteria and little organisms and eggs and things like that, if they're in there, they can't survive. So you don't have to worry about those things.
Right.
One more tip I wanted to go back on about the flour.
Mm-hmm.
The only good way I found to do vacuum sealing for flour is to use paper lunch bags, fill them about 3/4 full, fold the top down and put one piece of tape on it, just not across it, but down it, so it still has way for air to get out. And then put that bag in your vacuum bag and seal it that way. And it keeps the flour from getting into your vacuum sealer and all over the inside of the bag. Okay. And I did those that way. I'm going to do the same with the mashed potato flakes.
So just smaller batches.
Yep. And like I said, lentils, split peas, rice, beans. I also packed mixed nuts, which, I don't know how long term those are going to last, but I did that anyway. So that really is about all that I've done on the food and the water front so far. I did start growing certain things. I did a lot of research on what's best to grow. There's a lot of produce that as you pick it will grow back or grow even more than was there to begin with.
Right.
And you get harvest after harvest out of those things.
Well, that's what I was going to talk about a little bit earlier too. Something that I won't mention her name, but the other person that I podcast with, we talked about like using like heirloom seeds, like heirloom tomatoes and heirloom
Yeah.
potatoes, and and getting a hold of those seeds ahead of time, and you can get them at like lots of different stores or online or wherever. But the heirloom stuff tends to always come back. It hasn't been genetically modified.
Mhm.
Because a lot of the seeds people get these days, um, once you grow them like once or twice, the seeds just they don't yield the same amount of
Yeah.
seeds that they do before. They don't grow back always as big the next year because that's part of the business plan of the company.
Yeah. Right. Now,
They want you to buy new seeds and plant new
now
seeds. But
there's a lot
if
of
you get
good seed companies.
the heirloom stuff will always grow. You know.
Yeah, basically. But there's a lot of good seed companies out there. You can just do a little research, and you'll find one that fits your shtick. I found one, and I ordered seeds in bulk. So I've got big bags of all different varieties of seeds, but mostly greens. My produce, I bought individual packs.
So like
And I
lettuce
start,
and kale and stuff like that, or
yeah, mostly some cucurbitas like cucumbers, zucchini, squash, pie pumpkins because they're small. They don't have those giant pumpkins growing.
right.
Let's see, runner beans, bunch onions, tomato plants, obviously. Tomatoes are probably one of my absolute favorite foods on the planet. So,
Tomatoes are fruits and vegetables.
yeah, I got way more tomatoes than I'll ever be able to use. And then some herbs. Like you said, you got to have your seasonings. So I grew a smattering of herbs. I
Well,
picked, 5 that are my favorites, and that's all I
when
really need.
when you do fresh herbs, especially fresh herbs, not only are they more flavorful, but they still have nutrients in them and
So much
antioxidants and
better.
so on.
They're so much better than them dried ones you get at the grocery store, man.
Right, right.
And if you pick them while they're young, you don't let those plants get really big and full. They lose their, the
They
leaves
lose their
become
potency.
hardened, the flavor changes. You pick them while they're small, and you just grow more of them because they're easy to grow. You grow them in a windowsill.
Well, I remember going over to a friend of mine's house one time. It was on the Kentucky Derby, and he was making the mint julep drinks that are
Mm-hmm.
popular here at the Kentucky Derby,
Yeah.
and just at his house, and he would so after he poured the drink and had the drink ready, he would go out to his garden and just using his hands, he would just pinch off like a couple leaves of mint
Yep.
out of his yard, out of his garden,
Yep.
put them in the drink and stuff. And and I'm like, man, you're going to run out of those or whatever. He's like, no, they'll be grown back by next week.
But when you put mint in drinks, you can use a little. It looks almost like a pestle from a mortar and pestle,
Yeah.
but it's longer. And you kind of mash the leaf just a little bit. You don't want to mash it to pulp or anything.
Just
but
crush it a
releases
little
the
bit to
flavor.
bring out the flavor.
Yep, just enough to get flavor.
Exactly.
Uh,
Just like with basil and different things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, basil is one that I'm growing. Rosemary, thyme, dill, oregano, and what's the one you use for Mexican foods and for?
Oh, like cumin or
No, it's green. It's like I'm having a brain cramp.
oregano's
Cilantro.
big in the Mexican stuff. So I always see oregano in Mexican stuff.
Oregano.
Oregano, yeah. Oregano, yeah.
I thought that was Italian.
Parsley, maybe?
I see cilantro.
Cilantro, yeah. Maybe
That's
that's
the
it.
one I'm talking about. Yeah.
Cilantro, oregano too. There actually is a South American form of oregano.
I believe it. There's a lot of different varieties.
Yeah.
So anyway, it kind of summary. That's where I am right now. I'm covering just the basics, just to be sure that if it does get really bad, I've got myself and at least a few other people covered. I only live with one other person, but
Okay.
there's a third that I'm basically responsible for in prepping, who doesn't believe that anything like this is going to happen. But I'm not going to let him die either. It's my dad. I'm not going to let him die just because he doesn't believe that shit can hit the fan.
So outside of like the herbs and everything we've talked about and everything, let's talk a little bit more. I mean, if the what's the common phrase? If the crap hits the fan, I'm trying to keep it family friendly here. I mean, I know we've talked on a personal level about like firearms and having defense and everything. And you may not want to get specific with what you have personally. Nobody knows who you are, but I mean, what have you done? What's your thoughts on like personal defense and
Well, that's a
how
good question.
and sort of how to maybe be stealth to prevent people from even noticing you
Yeah.
if things get bad.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about being stealthy, but I'll tell you this. In my entire life, I've never owned a firearm, and I'm now 54, almost 55 years old. Never owned a firearm in my life. First thing I did when I got serious and felt that sense of urgency, I went right out and bought a pistol, a 9mm, and I bought a semi-automatic shotgun.
And people on my channel will know that I'm well armed. I mean, I have
Yeah,
a
right.
pistol with a laser, and I got a big old SKS 7.62 for hunting and human defense.
Yeah.
So
So
they'll
that's
know
why I
that from
got those
previous
two
videos.
particular firearms. And you know, it kind of sucked because I chose a 9mm just because they're so common, right?
Right.
And they got good stopping power. And I chose the semi-automatic shotgun for other reasons. And I got 12 gauge. Okay. Come to find out, everybody is buying all of that ammo, particularly. So just I bought them so that there would be plentiful ammo. Just to
You
find
picked
out
the
you
most
can't
common ones. You picked the most common ones everybody's getting. Yeah.
Exactly right, and I thought it was the other way around. But anyway, I did get stocked up on the 9mm. I found a good deal at a ammo company, well, a gun company in general. But they got 1,000 rounds for a couple $100, and 12 gauge. I'm just buying boxes at a time as I can. They're like $20 a box, you know, double lot, and that's it. I got myself stocked up and ready to go with that. Went to the shooting range, got familiar with the firearms and safety, made sure that they were sighted well, and
So you're sort of doing it the right way. You're making sure you understand how to use weapons and
yeah, they're
so
deadly. They're deadly devices. You know, I'm not. I don't play around with safety.
and I know as we've talked about offline, I mean, you were with me when I was looking for different firearms early in my life, in my
Mhm.
20s and everything, and you know, and the other guy we worked with, he already had some, and so he was sort of guiding me a little bit.
Yeah.
Initials DP, um, and we went out to different stores and everything. Now I've had my SKS that I have. I'm sitting here looking at it. It's over in the corner here. Um, I've had that since well before we knew each other. I actually got that back when I was like 19 years old.
It's a reliable weapon.
Very reliable. It's
Yep.
unbelievable, dude. I don't honestly, and I sort of did it on purpose. I don't think I've ever cleaned that rifle once.
Oh wow.
I've shot it a lot. I actually have videos of me shooting it, and all my friends shooting it, like out in the country and everything. Maybe I'll insert like a video of here of me doing that too. But
Every time I see the gun like this, I just think of this from like
yeah, Rambo it.
Rambo. Please don't post that.
Well, do yourself a favor. If the stuff really does hit the fan, go ahead and clean your weapons.
Yeah, I probably will. I mean,
Just stay on the safe side.
no, I think I oiled it once, but I just used standard extra virgin olive oil.
Oh
Yeah, I just put cooking oil on it, and it lubricated it enough so it like was loose again.
yeah.
The mecha, dude, that's totally not recommended.
Yeah,
But
I'm sure because some oils can gum up after a while.
right, and I made sure to wipe it down. I oiled it, then wiped it off, and so it was still, it wouldn't gunk up or anything. But no, that gun, it's been the most reliable firearm that I've had, and I've had it close to 30 years now.
Yeah, I remember we shot it at the shooting range back then.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, we
We
did.
went probably at least once a week. We went to a pawn shop at lunchtime downtown because there was several pawn shops within walking distance.
Mm-hmm.
We'd go check them out. I actually put a rifle in layaway back then, 30-06 Winchester with a scope.
Oh yeah.
Put $100 down on it, but at that time, I had some kind of philosophical issue with having firearms, and I just never went back, never paid any more money, and lost my $100, and I didn't worry about it. Now it's different now.
I just pulled up a picture. You really can't see it on your side, but of my Norenko SKS with a custom stock here. I'm scrolling it on my browser. Now, it started off as a wood stock. It was just an old wood stock. It was what's called a clipper strip or a clipper strip. Yeah, it's like instead of a magazine, like a detachable magazine, you would have a little strip that you would put your bullets onto, and you could load like 9 rounds into.
Like king fed.
Yeah. It was like a strip. It was like a strip that you put your bullets on that would hold them, and then you push that down into a fixed magazine, which I'll click on another picture here of the fixed magazine. And then over the years, the SKS and the AK variants that came out, they were very modifiable. So I ended up buying a different stock. I bought like a muzzle brake or a flash suppressor or whatever, I don't know. And then I bought, then I took off the fixed clip, and I have like detachable magazines now. I have like a 10. No, hold on, not a 10. I have like a 15, 20, 30, and like a 37 round banana clip. I actually bought that banana clip at one of the stores we went to back in the 90s. So I still have that magazine. That's the main one I still use. That holds 30. It's only supposed to hold like 30 rounds, but I can squeeze like 35 into that magazine.
One of the reasons that I bought the semi-automatic shotgun that I bought, there's 2 reasons. One is that it'll hold the traditional length shells, but it'll also hold 3-inch shells, and you can mix. You can put any different kinds of shells you want in there, and it'll fire them all just as fast as you can pull the trigger. And you can buy clips for that hold 5, 10, and 25 rounds. So that was, I thought that was good. I'm going to get a couple other clips for that, but for the 9mm, I got a Glock 17. And I bought 4. Well, it came with 2 17-round clips, and I bought 2 more, and then I also bought 2 of the 33-round clips.
Well, that's the same one that I bought at the pawn shop right outside of our work.
Yeah, right before they were outlawed for a bit.
Well, it was a first generation Glock 17.
Right.
It came with a 17-round and a 19-round extended.
Nice.
But that was as I mentioned to you offline the other night, that was a former police officer's handgun that he must have retired and sold it off to a pawn shop or whatever. So and then I picked it up with the under the arm holster.
Yeah.
And I still have that somewhere. It's still here in my garage somewhere. I sold the Glock 17 off to a friend of mine who was totally anti-gun until he moved into a bad neighborhood. Now he's totally pro 2A.
I keep all my clips loaded, and I keep a clip in the gun, but just not in the chamber.
So you don't chamber? Okay.
Nope, I don't chamber. I like to be a little safer than that. I don't mind just pulling the slide back.
But that's the best part. That's what scares people the most, is when you encounter them and you click it.
Yeah,
that alone will scare them away.
It's a little intimidating. Yeah. You're right.
So you don't want to have a bullet already in there.
No,
you want to be able to rack it.
That's right.
So whether just like and I don't mean to bring any kind of politics into this, but like when Joe Biden said that all you need is a shotgun and all you have to do is rack it and that'll scare them away. Yeah, he's right. He was right.
I was going to say he's not wrong on that
He's not wrong on that point. When you rack that sucker, people are going to run.
Yeah.
There's going to be people running. So.
Now, I also have a couple of handheld weapons. Like, I've got a really good machete. And I've got a combat machete, a military machete that's real heavy, and I keep those very, very sharp, and I keep them handy. I keep them clean, it's ready to go, just in case it ever came down to it. Just I've got those. If the zombie apocalypse hits, I can cut some heads off.
Well, right, and I know you know that I know, but you have a background in martial arts. Where does that fall into things?
Well, it doesn't really come into play. It's just something that's in my bag, that's been in my bag for many years.
No, I mean, do you think that's a useful skill for people to who are?
Well, sure it is. Because
well,
if you,
let me back up here. Specifically for people who may not want to have firearms or bladed weapons. I mean,
well, I can
do
tell
you
you
think
this.
martial arts would be a good thing for certain people to take?
Yes, but at this point in time, you should have started about 5 years ago minimum.
You're a little late now.
Because to really be good at martial arts, first of all, you have to have a lot of training. People think, I can go to class a couple times a week, I can practice an hour a week, and, in a year I'll be good. That's just not true.
Right.
And not only that, you have to have hand-to-hand practice. So you have to be able to spar and get used to somebody swinging at you, because if you've done all this training but you've never done sparring, as soon as somebody throws a punch at you or whatever,
if they hit you once and you're down and you're not thinking about the martial arts anymore, you're just in raw survival mode.
Martial arts, I would recommend things like Aikido, because with the locks and the pressure points that they use and the way they can redirect attacks, I think that would be a more quickly acquired skill for people. That I was in a hard martial arts style, it was Okinawan style. Mm-hmm. These people learned hand-to-hand combat by being subjugated by samurais about 400, 500 years ago. And they were not honorable samurais. They were really terrible people.
So the form you had was like a tried and true method.
Yeah, this style grew out of them learning by practicing at night and in dark and in the secret with farm implements and hand-to-hand combat, learning how to kill a samurai with their bare hands. Every technique they teach is tried in combat to the death. They will not teach anything else, including their warm-up exercises and things like that, are all known not to cause long-term problems to your body. Yeah, I mean, it's really like a science of martial arts. It really is.
And you may not win, but you're going to put up a really good fight. So.
Well, you better win.
Well, yeah, that's the goal.
And they teach you how to apply your training as well. The idea is to hurt before being hurt, to maim before being maimed, and then the last resort is to kill before being killed.
And that sort of goes back to the Aikido too, right? In Aikido, if I'm not mistaken, I had a little bit of exposure to that. Isn't that where you sort of use the force of your opponent against them?
Yeah, you redirect their energy, but it also has a lot of holds, locks, and pressure points.
Right.
Because I'll tell you what, there's a guy that used to come in when we trained over in the...
And aren't they sort of more of a breaking? You actually break if you can?
Well, you can, yeah, because when...
Or is that jiu-jitsu?
I don't really know, but I'll tell you this, once you've got somebody in a lock, it only takes a little extra pressure to break.
Okay, so if you take it a step further...
If you subdue somebody with a wrist lock, and they're about to get out of it and they're still struggling, you can go ahead and break their wrist without much more effort, So it's a pretty good style. But listen, this guy used to come in, he was a Dayton police officer, and he used to come into our place about once a month or every couple of months and teach self-defense training in terms of locks and holds. This is a guy who walked out in the middle of the street when this psycho had a knife and was threatening everybody. Just walked right up to him, all calm, talking to him nice and calm and everything. As soon as he got close to him, bam, disarmed him in an instant, had him in a lock.
Okay.
He really knew what he was doing. But I couldn't believe how easy it is to apply a lock or a pressure point and what it'll do to a person. They are done.
Right. So yeah, that's why I feel good about like my daughters. I mean, as you know, I don't have my daughters all the time, but ever since me and my ex-wife worked together, we always had them in some. Well, instead of sending them to the traditional after-school program, we sent them to the martial arts programs. And the ones, at least down here where I'm at, they're not just like a simple after-school program or whatever. They actually taught. You know, they actually had uniforms. They were like, you know, going through the different belt levels and everything.
Yeah.
But over the years, they did like taekwondo. They did Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Is it jiu-jitsu? Yeah, Brazilian.
Yeah.
The, that form. And then after my ex-wife and I divorced, they got into Krav Maga, the Israeli form,
Hmm.
which is very destructive. It's a very destructive form, you know, for your opponent.
That's how this style of karate is. One of the things that you have to do for your promotion after you're a certain age and a certain rank, your promotions always involve breaking.
Right.
1-inch pine boards, 1, 2, or 3, and then 3 of them is the equivalent of 1 inch of concrete, like a patio block. But they didn't use spacers. They stacked those blocks right on top of each other. So if you break 3 inches of concrete, which my dad actually did one time, it's serious. You're breaking literal 3 inches of concrete. There's no spacers to help, you know, one fall on the next and help break that one.
Right.
It's you
solid.
trained, you did what they call body hardening. All of your striking surfaces, they had certain implements that you could punch or use a shuto, which is a chop, the little bone on the corner of your hand there,
Right.
your toe tip or the balls of your feet, also your elbows and your knees. Those are all surfaces, striking surfaces that you can harden. And it takes a long time and consistent effort, but what it'll do is it'll break down microfractures in the bone that will heal and thicken. Just like anything, if you work it out, like how you get calluses, your bones can get calluses.
Yeah,
like that.
it's sort of like I remember that Bruce Lee movie that came out back in the '90s where he would hit the kung fu dummies or whatever,
Yeah.
and it would do the microfractures, and then the calcium buildups would reinforce those bones.
That's exactly right. My dad
To the point where he could literally hit the thing, and he could break the wood before it broke him.
Yeah,
You
like
know?
my dad had calcium buildups, not just on his. See, we only used the first 2 knuckles, the two big
Okay.
knuckles, because if you hit with those other ones, you can easily break the bones in the back of your hand. So we learned how to angle your punch so that the first 2 knuckles are what's used, and you harden those. But also, he had from blocking, like blocking punches, had calcium buildups on the inside and outside of his arms, right below his wrist, that you could literally see. There was a little bit of a hump there. There was such a buildup. And he used to break the striking surfaces that they used. He broke so many of them that Sensei made him start making them to replace them because he broke so many of them.
Wow.
Yeah, he was no joke, man. I learned from some of the best. One of the first American styles from Okinawa that was actually sanctioned by the master in Okinawa to open a branch in America. He died a few years back.
Was that the Shorin-ryu?
Yeah, Shorin-ryu. Now, there's a lot of different styles of Shorin-ryu. Ours was Matsubayashi, and it came straight from Okinawa.
Wow. That's like Karate Kid stuff.
They have their lineage, you know, like a family tree. They have a master tree that shows their lineage going back about 450 years. Who taught who all the way down to the master.
Like you said, back into the samurai days. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, it ain't no joke to be able to kill a samurai with your bare hands.
Right.
Samurais they may not be honorable, but they're very well trained, and they ain't no joke.
Yeah, it's just like the old Tom Cruise movie and everything, you know, when he was like trained by the villagers and
The Last Samurai.
The Last Samurai, yeah. And even though it's a Hollywood movie and everything, there was probably some grain of truth and grain of
Actually, I
salt in
think
that.
the one he was in was called something different. The Last Samurai, I can't remember now. There was one that Richard, many, many years ago, it was like a 7-part TV series that this guy did that was about American being trained as a samurai.
Okay.
Anyway,
Yeah. So outside of like, well, okay, we've talked about the martial arts, we've talked about weapons and guns, and you know, and again in the martial arts part, you know, like I said, my daughters, I'm glad that they've been involved with it for years. They're now like 17 and 14, and they're pretty confident. I've actually had them like show me some stuff, and they've hurt me. So, and they've hurt me without even trying.
yeah.
You know, and I wasn't being easy on them. I'm like, show me what you got.
Yeah.
And even though I have some background in martial arts, not as much as anybody else, they defended themselves.
Oh, good.
And then I was really glad that they did get into some level of weapons training, bladed weapons.
Yeah.
So, which, for a lot of people with weapons too, like you were saying, like you get into a situation, you may have this machete or this knife, whatever you have, whatever's on hand, but if you don't know how to use it, then
Yeah,
it can
right.
be turned against you. It could be used
Yeah,
against
there's
you.
the trick right there. If it's turned against you, because that's surprisingly easy to do.
But in actual courses, they learn the weapon part of it, which
Mhm.
I'm really glad. So they it's an external part of their training.
Yeah.
So
One thing I forgot that I wanted to throw out
yeah.
there: if somebody is considering styles of martial arts, I will throw one thing out, and I'm probably going to get hated on for this statement.
Go ahead.
If they teach you spinning kicks, run. Do not train in that style. If they teach you any kind of jump kicks where both feet leave the ground, run. Those two things
Or foot
are
sweeps, like
not.
foot sweeps.
Listen, well, foot sweep maybe because you can leave. You have one foot that you can still have your own
Okay.
stability, your own center of gravity. But as soon as both feet leave the ground, a good martial artist, a good fighter, they'll kill you.
Yeah, you're
My
vulnerable.
dad, listen, my dad didn't. Our style didn't really promote kumite, which is a sparring and fighting, very much. So when they went to the tournaments, there was three things. There was forms, which we know as katas.
Hmm.
There was I forget what the other one was, and then there was sparring, which is have one black brown belt fight another or whatever.
Right.
We didn't do the sparring part. We would participate in the other two. But since they made my dad one time for his own self-confidence, made him go out there and fight. Now, he was a brown belt fighting a black belt in some other style of karate. And this guy came at him and tried to do a jump kick. Dad went down on his knee, punched him in the groin, and then nailed him in the back, in the kidneys, as soon as he landed on the ground.
Yeah.
He did all that while that dude was in the air with this fancy
Doing
clock.
all this foolish stuff.
Now, that was just in competition. If that had been a real situation, he would have killed that guy in a heartbeat.
Right.
Yep. Do not leave both feet off the ground, and do not do spinning. Don't take your eyes off your opponent ever.
Well, and that's where I sort of respect. And again, I don't know how familiar you are with Krav Maga.
Not very much at all, really.
Okay, like I mentioned earlier, it's an Israeli form of martial arts, and it's very focused on close combat. There's no spinning or anything silly like that, but it's a very close form, and they focus on like force, breaking, using sort of like Aikido and stuff, using your opponent's energy against them. It has that same concept. But I actually met, gosh, it's probably been 11 years ago now. I met one of the biggest Krav Maga teachers here in Kentucky. He's from Norway actually, or Sweden. I can't remember. He's Norwegian, but he was Norwegian, like special forces, and then he moved to like Kentucky. but he teaches this, and unbeknownst to me, after my separation from my ex-wife and everything, my ex-wife actually put my kids in his classes.
Oh,
I'm like,
really?
I know that guy. I'm like, good job. So,
Yeah, right.
Because I respect that form so much, and in Krav Maga specifically, it's sort of, look it up after we get off or whatever, but
Yeah.
off the call here, but it's specifically really for, again, Israeli. There's a lot of female soldiers in the Israeli military. So it's really made to be like a form that allows people with a minimal level of physical acumen to be able to defend themselves against a much stronger opponent. So
They probably have holds and locks and pressure points in that too. Then those are some of the easiest ways for people who aren't as physically overbearing as their opponent may be. It's for them to take them down. I'll tell you something else.
yeah, I think it was actually a lot of pressure points, like the under the arms and then the groin and stuff like that. So,
Yeah, well, that people may not know, but if they've ever bumped it before, they definitely know. But right in the middle between your bicep and your tricep, right in the middle of your arm there on the inside. No, on the inside, yeah, right. A little
Okay.
lower on your arm.
Down
Right in
in
the
here.
middle, right? No, on your arm.
Oh,
Not your, yeah, right about there.
okay.
There's a pressure point right there. But if you can strike that, the rest of their
It'll
arm,
just go dumb.
yeah, it's useless for probably at least a few minutes. And
Okay.
it hurts like hell. There's a few points like that too. Where you were pointing in your armpit, there's one right down there too.
Yeah. Like
No, in your armpit, down on your body a little bit.
there's like a node there that, yeah.
Well, yeah, it's to the right of your boob.
My Bible.
Right under your arm. But that's a point too. You can knock people out with that point.
Oh,
And it
wow.
doesn't take much to do it either.
Okay.
Dad was demonstrating, one of his students one time was demonstrating a toe tip kick and had a hold of his arm and just brought his leg up. He thought he only touched his gi with his foot when he kicked him,
Mm-hmm.
but he actually touched him, and the guy's legs went rubbery and he almost fell down. And I mean, he barely touched him, but I'll tell you, his kick was deadly. So
Yeah.
barely touching with his kicks probably way more than other people. But another nice thing about that energy, I call it energy redirection, is just not only to evade getting hit by somebody, but to open up a place where you can strike. So if somebody comes in with a right hand punch and you redirect that further to their right, that opens up the right side of their body, and you can hit those pressure points, bam, just like that. So you just bat their thing aside and a little strike right there, you can knock them out.
All right.
Hit people in the chest, man, be careful about that. You can kill a person if you're not careful. If you have a good technique, hit somebody in the chest. That's why they train with their punches so hard that you could literally explode the heart muscle. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, I know, but it's true.
No, I remember seeing like some Hollywood movies or whatever where like some guy that was in the military who was like a trained special forces operator, and he came back and then he got into a bar fight outside like a bar or whatever, and he used the force that he thought was necessary, but he ended up killing the guy or whatever. And then he went to prison, and
Well, it can happen, sure. And
Yeah,
also,
I mean,
right below your chest in the center is the solar plexus. That is a great place to strike.
the
because
solar
you can-
plexus, and there's a spot here called
right there.
the xiphoid process.
That's the solar plexus. If you hit somebody solid enough right there, you can collapse the diaphragm for a number of minutes, and they won't be able to breathe. They'll go right down in a pile, and they won't move.
Well,
They'll be
I
trying
mean,
to breathe.
That's a part. Honestly, that actually hits me a little personally because I was a skinny kid. If you remember me from the '90s, I was really skinny and stuff. And I used to have like a sinkhole like on my chest. I was sort of like one of those kids.
Yeah.
And right below my sternum here, I don't know if you can see it through my shirt, and I'm not going to lift my shirt up, but there's I have a bump there, and that's what's called it's a specific bone called the xiphoid process.
Yeah.
And if somebody hit me in that, mine unfortunately is very exposed. So if somebody were to hit me in that, it could puncture a lung, it could puncture my bronchial, tube or whatever. And so, yeah, so that's a part. If I did have to get into some kind of fight or battle, I would protect that spot because it's so vulnerable.
Here's a couple other interesting points from that style of karate. They trained with, like I said, the first two knuckles, also because not just so you don't break those other bones, but because it's well, you know how it is. If you spread force over a larger surface, like your whole front of your fist, it dissipates the force, the energy. But if you punch with one or two knuckles, it's concentrated. It's like using a ball peen hammer kind of a surface. It's a lot more force and energy with just a couple of knuckles. They have literally, I didn't believe this. I had to look this up and find out for myself. They have brass chest plates from samurais in Okinawan museums that have indents of knuckles in a brass chest plate. Because the guys were so hardened that they could literally put dents in a brass chest plate.
So does that get a little bit into and again, it may be cliched, but does that get a little bit into like the Bruce Lee, Jeet Kune Do, where What is it? His 1 inch punch or whatever that he can do and
Yeah.
knock somebody off their feet. Is that sort of the same concept?
Well, not entirely. The amazing thing about the 1 inch punch is that he can do it in 1 inch. Like he doesn't have to haul back and swing.
Right.
That's pretty amazing. But his style, it ain't no joke. Like some people will say, "Oh, Bruce Lee, he ain't all that." There's people in America claiming, "Oh, I used to spar with him and I'd block his stuff." Yeah, well, they've been proven wrong. There's videos now that'll show you they never even touched him.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's no joke. You don't believe it? Take a look at the videos online of him playing ping pong with nunchaka.
Oh, I've seen that. Yeah. That's
What?
freaking amazing.
It blew my mind. And also him, people throwing wooden matches at him, and he had a little sandpaper strip on the bottom of his nunchaka.
He was lighting them up.
And he was lighting those matches, every one of them, bam, and they would just fly off lit. Yeah, he's no joke. But he was such a showman and such an egotist.
Yes, that's true. But
People just want to tear him down.
But he had some right to be.
He really was amazing. He used to ask everybody he met to fight him, and he never lost once, not one time.
He knew he was the shit. To be
Yeah, he
honest,
was. He really was.
he really
And
was.
it's most likely because of who taught him.
Oh,
The
right.
Ip Man. You ever seen the movies, the Ip Man movies? The Donnie Yen.
Absolutely, yeah. Ip Man, yeah.
Yeah,
Dude,
well,
I just watched those this past year for the first time. Those were absolutely.
the first one was phenomenal. The rest of them are pretty good, but
The rest of them are pretty good, but the first one was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, they all were in their own right, but
that's when I realized that Donnie Yen is no joke either. Because once you've been in it for so long and you've seen so many people who are really, really seriously good, like master level, 10th degree type people,
right,
you can tell technique when you see it.
right.
And Donnie Yen, he's got technique, man. He's not a joke.
Well, let's go more general here now.
Yeah, right.
We've talked martial arts, we've talked weapons and bladed and survival and water and food and I guess okay. So when it comes to now that we've talked about like so many different topics now, let's sort of go to the overall like geopolitical view without getting into politics. What over say the next 6 or 12 months or whatever, what do you see coming?
Well, here's the thing.
That's a loaded question.
Well, yeah, because I can't predict the future, but I know what the potentials are for these things. That's why I said earlier, I don't know. It could be a major bump in the road, and it could be outright gangs roving the streets trying to kill each other for food. It could go from one extreme to the other.
Right.
I can tell you this: we are not going to return to normalcy.
Not
That's not
anytime
gonna
soon. Yeah.
No. When they talk about a transition lately, somebody let the cat out of the bag about this transition. They're not talking about green energy. That's
So someday when we're like 60 or 70 years old, it may return to somewhat normal, but not anytime soon.
well, there'll be a new normal, yes.
I don't like that term.
Yeah, I don't either, but you understand what I'm saying. I don't
do,
mean
I
that
do.
particularly. I'm not talking about the new world order. and
New
crap like
normal. No, I know you're not. I just hate that
that.
term.
Everything comes to a normal. Things go from one extreme to another, and then they balance out, and they come to a sort of an equilibrium. How about
Right.
that? The new
The
equilibrium.
new balance. New balance.
Yeah, the new balance is going to be much less, if any, governments. And I'm thinking worldwide, not because this is a worldwide thing. whether people wanna argue
So
that
maybe it'll
point or
be
not.
more of a balance among people rather than the governments.
Things are going to go more local. We're talking like 1900s technologies and people helping each other and growing, locally sourced food, farms, and things like that. Trading, bartering, money systems are going to collapse. I'm going to tell you right now.
So it might go to like, well, I actually talked to a friend again earlier tonight about the same topic. It's the friend that I've been staying out at his RV. He has ducks, and when I left there the other night, I went to pick him up from the airport when he came back from vacation, and I took 12 of the duck eggs home that his ducks laid for me that week.
Yeah.
And my daughters were here this weekend. After I dropped him off, I came home and my daughters were here. And the next morning, they're like, Dad, these are the best eggs we've ever had.
Right? No kidding.
And
I just saw a sign here in town when I was going to have coffee with my dad. I saw a sign that said farm fresh eggs.
exactly.
So I immediately pulled over and wrote the phone number down. I'm like, I wonder what else they've got.
Heck yes, dude. And that's the way of the future.
Totally.
It's
And
so primitive. It's so primitive, but it's the way of the future.
there may be some form of money still in existence, maybe some digital currencies.
Well, even outside of digital, I mean, I'm living now in a part of Kentucky that even in the 1920s and 30s and 40s during the wars and stuff, I actually have a screenshot. If I can find it, I'll post it here on this video. But I have a screenshot of I think it was a $10 bill. Which was a lot of money back in the 20s or 30s or whatever. It was like a $10 bill that actually said this bill was issued by the Bank of Somerset, Kentucky.
Really? Nice.
Yeah, it was actually, but it still had, it was still a normal $10 bill, but it was issued by the local bank.
See, that could happen, but those sorts of things, they won't be fiat money like you're holding these days.
No, it wasn't fiat because that dollar was
anymore.
that dollar was issued based on the assets of the people who were involved in the bank, the farmers, the business people,
And legally speaking, if you're going to do a financial transaction, you have to trade real goods. They have to be backed by real goods. So this is actually just fake money now.
So for example, that dollar may have been backed by 10 pounds of grain.
Yep, whatever it is. So this is the sort of thing I'm talking about. If there is any kind of money, that's fine, whatever we can do, but it'll be a lot of trade and bartering. This guy over here, they know how to make sort of shoes or whatever, and they want food, and they'll trade, a number of shoes for some food. The people will be trading whatever their skills are, will be their livelihood.
Or whatever assets they have. Like the friend of mine I got the duck eggs from, for example, he has 2 ducks. 2.
Wow.
2 ducks. They laid a dozen eggs for me.
Wow.
We looked up egg prices, and earlier in the evening, another friend of mine in one of our other groups that we're involved in, there was a fire at an egg plant, and so eggs are probably going to be going through the roof in price.
Well, if you're talking about that one just a few days ago, the chicken farm.
Yeah, the chicken farm.
Yeah, a few million chickens just bit it.
Yeah. So I told him, like, dude, you need to, every morning when you let those ducks out, you need to grab their eggs, rinse them off, put them in the fridge or wherever you want to put them or whatever. But you could probably, just with those 2 ducks and a dozen eggs a week, you could probably, when the prices go up, you could probably sell those for anywhere from $15 to $25 a dozen.
Yeah.
A dozen.
So right now it's $4 for 18 where I'm living for chicken eggs.
So and these are duck eggs, which are bigger and tastier. So I told him, you need to take the other 17 acres of your property. You need to get a couple hundred more ducks, and you need to start selling these things.
Yeah, you sure could.
Now, before everything else happens, start selling them now.
Yeah, right. Because if you're not already working on things like this, you're going to be one of the people that's left in the lurch.
Right.
Because, like I said, something's going to happen. I don't know how extreme. But these things are going to start cascade failures. Everything's already set up for it to start. They'll be starting with a couple of banks failing, and then the bond market's going to fail, things like that. And the whole money, they're going to try to force you into digital currency.
And then you got supply chain breakdown, the truck drivers, the diesel prices, all that stuff.
Yeah, so it's either locally sourced or you're under their thumb.
Right.
Whatever they do for you, they'll use that as an excuse to militarize places like silos, schools, voting booths, all that sort of thing. They'll be bringing in either military or police and trying to force in a police state.
It's all going to come under the what do they call it, the National Production Act or whatever the.
Yeah, America's never had to walk down the street and have somebody go, "Let me see your papers."
Right.
They don't know what that kind of thing is like, but they could. It could happen.
And it's happening. It's happening in some places already.
Yeah. Now I'm not like a doom and gloom sort, but I'm preparing for the worst. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Just in case, because I'm not going to be left hanging.
Prepare for the worst, hope for the best. So.
Absolutely. So what else is going to happen? Well, what about electricity? You know what's going to happen if the electric starts failing? And the electric grids are already
at capacity. Pressure. Yeah.
And this is an issue that they've been slowly working into the mainstream minds. But if the electricity fails, that's going to be really bad. Because if you think about how dependent you are on electricity, if for nothing else, your refrigerator, warm water,
your water heater or your water container out in your garage or whatever, it goes out, you don't have hot water.
And like I said, if you're growing indoors and relying on that, well, bye-bye food.
Right.
It doesn't take long with no light for your food to just die.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy.
All of these things are ramping up. The food shortages particularly. They estimated recently something like 40% of the wheat market is biting the dust right now.
I haven't heard that.
That's huge. Do you know how much of our food is made from wheat? Yeah, lots. And like you said, with the chickens, all the food processing plants that are mysteriously burning to the ground, it's now up to almost 20 food processing plants that burn down. Do you see that in the media?
Yeah. No, you don't see it in the mainstream media.
No, you don't. So, like I said, prepare for the worst, hope for the best. That's definitely right.
Yeah, dude, I mean, okay, so food, supply chain, I mean, diesel prices, the fuel prices, I mean, just like even the mainstream media is talking about fuel prices, like, like you got most trucking companies and maybe people outside the country. I'm sorry about my squeaky chair here, but most people outside of like the rural areas don't really realize how food gets from one place to another, and
by diesel trucks.
It's by diesel trucks. It's by semis, and most of the people who are carrying that stuff, they're not big trucking companies like J&L or it's small local truck companies.
Yeah, or just single owner operators.
Single owner operators, yeah, and that stuff, when it gets too expensive for them to do it, they're just going to stop.
Of course they are.
I heard some stat the other day that it was probably on my Facebook. I don't put much credence in Facebook rumors or whatever, but this one was quite believable, that over the past few months, like probably 1,000 different small and local truck companies have shut down.
Mm-hmm.
They can't afford the fuel prices anymore.
That's right, and most of those guys have other skills that are marketable, so they can make some money anyway.
Other locals
probably got some savings. They make, actually, people don't realize that truckers can make pretty damn good money.
Probably local skills like plumbing or building a house or whatever. It may not. Basically, other skills that aren't going to contribute to the supply chain, but still makes them enough money to get by. But
and on this point, there's one thing I wanted to make sure and mention. If you haven't seen this yet, check out a site called Billions in Change.
Okay, let me pull that up real quick.
Okay. This guy that owns this company, he's an Indian fella, but you've heard of the 5-hour energy shots, right? Everybody's heard of
yeah,
that.
Of course, yeah.
He's the one that started marketing those to begin with. That's how he made his billions. Now, he's worth something like $5 billion now. He's dedicating 99% of his money to this company to change the world, literally, to identify what are the most important points and figure out how to get those things solved and into people's hands cheaply.
Okay, so I just went to that website and he has like a short video and then like a long video. Let me click on the short one here real quick. And you might hear it here in the background.
How do you bring lights to billions of people, prevent millions of tons of air pollution, and ensure clean water for everyone?
It's playing here on the screen.
Watch. My name is Manoj Bhargav, and most people know me as the founder of 5 Hour Energy.
Yes.
If you have wealth, it's a duty to help those who are less privileged. What is it that we can do that can make an enormous difference? The answer is invent stuff. A third of the world has no electricity. How can we get electricity to their home? Let's go for simple. This is what we're calling a power pack. For a household, you have this as your entire electricity source. Never get an electric bill again. It can run a fan, a TV, computer, mobile phone, and lights for up to several hours. You can charge this from the bicycle, you can charge it from solar, and if you want more electricity than that, there's a solar briefcase. It's easy to carry and really easy to use. The solar briefcase will charge the power pack in just a few hours. I visited some villages and we found out that for them, one light bulb, their whole evening is productive. They're working. The kids studying. You can use it for small TVs, fans, tablets, computers. If you have one of these, you never get an electric bill. This is how you're supposed to use solar. It's so cool. Regarding the water projects that we're doing, we made this thing that turns brackish water into fresh water. It'll change the lives of millions of people. So we think the future for the next several years is this. In agriculture, we discovered that you can make fertilizer in 18 days with no money. It doubles produce and uses half the water. If you follow the instructions, you can make it yourself. We're actually going to put it on the internet and it's free. We went from 50 to 40,000 farms. In 5 years, I expect it to be in several million farms. We're affecting water shortages and you're getting healthier food. And the farmers up the money they're making by 10 times. With one simple change. When you make a change at the very base, everything works above it. Getting the fertilizer out there, getting the electricity out there, getting water out there. That's all that matters. It's time to stop talking about awareness and inspiration. It's time to do something. Let's do something really great.
So you heard his main point is to hit the most fundamental things. Like we started out talking about, you got air, you got water, and then you got food. And guess what he did? He hit 2 of those 3 points right off the bat. The water thing that he's got is like a filtration system that you can hook up to any kind of a well or a pump or anything, and you can just take local water that's, I mean, really serious. He calls it brackish water.
Yeah,
but
brackish.
Even terrible water. The filters last for years. You can backwash them so that they'll last longer. Now, that contraption, it looks kind of big. It's for like a village type water supply. It's not for personal. But the electric thing, this is what I'm looking into. That little power pack that he's got, remember he mentioned you can charge it by solar or by bike?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
He has this bike. It looks like an exercise bike, but it's sort of the reclining type where you kind of sit down in it.
Like a recumbent, yeah.
1 hour of pedaling on that thing will charge that pack for the rest of the day.
And who has the most energy in the world? Put your kid on that.
Yeah, right?
Put a kid on that, and you got power for an entire day. One kid.
You want dessert tonight? Give me an hour on the bike.
Exactly. And the kids will probably enjoy it. Put 2 kids. Right? Get 2 or 3 bikes and put 2 or 3 kids on. They'll have fun.
Well, the other nice thing is that he's trying to do this to where it's cheap and easily accessible.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking into that power pack. He's also got this, it looks like a little thin briefcase, but it opens up to the right and to the left. So you have 3 or 4 solar panels. And it leans back a little bit so that it's angled up towards the sun. Well, that would charge it up as well.
Well, being into the whole RV, van life, all that stuff that I've been watching for the past couple months or whatever.
That's what you need, buddy.
Yeah, there's I forget the main brand. There's like a main brand, and there's like another. I can't think of anything at the moment, but there's 2 major brands of like battery packs, and both of them have like those foldable solar panels.
Yeah.
And the main company that I saw the other day, and they just had like a new announcement. So they offer like a 2200 watt hour or 2200 watt battery, which is huge. That battery alone could power like most Americans for like 2 days.
Yeah.
before you have to charge it. But then they have solar panels that come with it. The entire pack, the battery and the panels, you can get for like $3,500, which sounds like a lot, but if it was like
Shit, add up. I'm sorry. I mean, crap. Add up your electric bill for a year.
exactly.
And
But
compare.
then for poorer countries, if it was subsidized by the UN or whoever, you could get that price down to wholesale or lower, and that would power like a small village.
Yeah, right. So he did water and electric, and the third thing he mentioned was fertilizer. You know, oddly enough, the technique that he's promoting, that he said he put on the internet for free, is something that I just saw because I'm looking how to do my own growing, right? You know, self-sustainable growing, where I don't have to go to the store and buy, you know, chemicals to put into my plants to grow them because they may not be there to buy. Well, all you got to do is you alternate green and brown layers. The green layers is any kind of plant material, just scraps from your kitchen, not meat and eggs and cheese, plant material. And then the brown is things like plain paper, like brown paper bags, any kind of non-glossy, non-printed type of paper you can use, sawdust, all that sort of thing. And then you alternate green and brown layers into a pile. And then give it a couple of days. It heats up to like 150 degrees in the middle as it starts breaking down. And you just flip it over and keep mixing it up. In 18 days, you have good fertilizer.
No, I've seen that. Yeah, I'm
That's phenomenal.
quite
Because
familiar
those
with
people
that.
are talking like a year before their compost piles are really productive and good.
And
And you have to you have to be careful with compost not to get the clay type gooey stuff that can
Right.
form in there. This is nice and simple. In 18 days, you have fertilizer.
And that ties me in. Actually, I found the brand that I'm talking about here. It's called the Jackery, Jackery, Jackery 2000 Pro. It's a 2200 watt. It's basically like a battery backup, like a UPS, but
Yeah.
they call them solar generators now. But it has two separate plugs for solar plug-ins. So like if you're in like a van life or an RV thing, you can plug in your main RV power, but then you can also plug in like a daisy chained set of the foldable solar panels that we just saw in that video. And I just watched a video of this the other day and everything, and you could literally charge up this 2200 watt battery using the 6 panels. If you buy the full package, you can charge it up in like an hour and a half,
Yeah, that's about right.
and then you have like battery for like 24 hours. I mean, it's insane, dude. It's like, you always hear these conspiracy theories about like free energy devices, Tesla, and all these like free energy things and stuff. This truly is like almost a free energy device. You put out your panels in the sun for an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, even if it takes 5 hours, and you have enough power to supply a small, either a family or a small group of people for an entire day or two.
Yeah, it's funny when people talk about free energy devices. My first thought is, you've got a giant one right in the sky. What are you talking about?
Yeah, there's a big one right up above.
And it's reliable as hell, other than cloudy days, but that's what battery packs are for.
And then the other brand was Bluetti, Bluetti. Bluetti and Jackery are the two big ones.
Well, I'm almost certainly going to get a device like that, some way to generate electricity, because if the electricity fails, it isn't that you can't survive. There's ways you can do, like, that's one reason why I was talking about canned food. You don't even have to cook it. You can just open a can and eat it, right?
Right.
In fact, but electricity, you don't even have warm water without it. You need a fire just to get warm water. And are you going to take a bath? No. How much warm water are you going to heat up on a fire just to take a bath? Probably not. You're going to be taking bird baths.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's a whole other topic, but
Can't store your food because you don't have a refrigerator.
well, when it comes to showers and baths and stuff, but this Jackery thing I'm talking about, this 2200 watt, the review that I saw the other day, it was a Canadian guy, and they sent him a free one just to review it or whatever, and he got out his panels and he ran it all the way to the ground. It was like empty, and then he pulled out the panels, the foldable solar panels, the 6 of them or whatever. the $3,500 package or whatever, and he charged it up in like an hour and a half, and in direct sunlight. He's up in Canada, you know, where the sun isn't. Well, the sun's stronger up here now, I think, than it is in the southern hemisphere. But
Yeah.
but he charged up the entire panel like in an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then he went to like a. It wasn't a pawn shop, like a thrift store,
Yeah.
and he bought like a toaster, a microwave, like a convection oven. He bought like all these different like high powered devices that normal quote unquote Americans or Western people would use, and he hooked them up to this thing, and he cooked like his lunch, his dinner. He cooked like everything in these things, and even the microwave, which was like 1,000-watt microwave. This thing could run the microwave for like 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
When do you have to microwave something for 2.5 hours?
Right.
You know, it's usually 2 minutes.
Yeah, and people don't think about it much, but those are the only sorts of things you really need to get along. You know, in a hard situation, what do you need? Like a toaster oven, maybe an air fryer or something like that.
It's anywhere from 2 to 10 minutes of power.
Yeah, a couple other devices, because I know these things because I was a college student and I lived on a big truck for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So you learn how to, have a kitchen that doesn't take a whole lot of effort or energy or space. And just those little devices like that, unless you're feeding a big family, that could be a little more problematic, obviously, but just a couple small devices like that's all you really need.
Yeah, I mean, and then the rest of it outside of like the high power devices. I mean, if you have like a really needy girlfriend who needs to run like a hair dryer,
don't we all?
Then that might take up half the power of the battery. But then you can pull out the panels and charge it for an hour, and you're back to normal.
Yeah, the most energy I need is for my shaver when I shave my head.
Yeah. All of us bald guys.
Actually, I think the most energy that I use is heating water so I can have shower and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that was a whole other topic I sort of wanted to get into. When I was staying out at my friend's RV, even though he's in a decent sized RV, it's like a 38-foot long one or whatever. The water tank on that's only like a 6-gallon tank. So
wow.
So even on something now it heats up really quick. So like if I took a shower, then my kids were out there, my daughter, she could wait like a half an hour, and that 6 gallons would be heated back up.
That's not bad.
That's if we're on like shore power, like 110.
Take short showers without a whole lot of water pressure, because 6 gallons ain't much.
Right. So I basically, during that week, the week and a half that I was out there, it wasn't a big deal. I would turn on the water, I'd wait for it to warm up, I would step in, I would use my soap, I would get all the good spots that I had to get, and I was clean.
Yep.
It doesn't take more than like 3 or 4 minutes.
Yep.
And then you smell fine. It's not that hard.
And don't overuse your deodorant. Jesus, you only need just a little bit.
Exactly.
Well, most people do.
Well, then you have people like Matthew McConaughey, which I talked about earlier from Interstellar. It was rumor back in the day that he would take like 5 or 6 showers a day when he was on set or whatever, because he didn't use deodorant. So he would start to stink a little bit after being on set for a couple hours. But then he would just go take another shower, wash off all the steak, and he smelled fine.
Whatever floats your boat.
Yeah, well, when you're on like a 20-hour movie set or whatever, you got to take more than one shower.
Well, sure.
But the point is that, you could showers. I mean, again, we're talking survival here. That's our main topic tonight. I mean, you don't need like a shower like every single day.
Right, and all those products that you're using, you can cut that down to maybe 2, and you don't have to use much of them. Some form of, like I like to use shampoo as soap sometimes.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah.
Or I'll use,
or in your beard or whatever.
Yeah, or I'll use the liquid soap as shampoo. Vice versa.
Right.
A little bit of deodorant.
Yeah, I do the same. Usually when I'm in the shower, like I don't have any hair really, but I'll take shampoo, put it in my beard. Then I usually use like a bar soap, like an old style, like ivory soap or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'll hit all my main spots that I have to hit. You know, I call them the stink spots,
Stink zone.
the stink zones. I hit all those, and then I'm done.
Yeah.
And I didn't believe it at first. I was really hesitant because you're influenced by like Western beliefs or whatever.
Yeah.
But then I went out to a bar that night, and everybody said, "You smell fine," you know. I'm
Yeah.
like,
And you don't need to be standing in 4 inches of bubbles in the
Exactly.
shower in order to be clean. It only takes a little bit in a few minutes.
and then I did it for a week, and then I did it for 2 weeks, and then I did it for 4 weeks, and nobody complained.
Yeah.
Nobody complained. I smelled fine.
Well, listen, I had a friend. Everybody called him a dirty hippie, but he took those things to an extreme. You know how the traditional hippie lifestyle is.
Well, he might have gone to like a creek or something, you know.
But no, he didn't.
No.
I knew him well. I was with him pretty much every day. He was one of my very best friends.
Mm-hmm.
But he really took that to an extreme, and he never smelled.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, that's a topic for another night. I mean, because cleanliness and stuff, that's going to become a big issue too after the the SHTF.
Bird baths are where it's at, man.
Yeah, I mean creeks are fine. You know, if you can't find like soap, find some like good smelling plant or a plant that has like what is it, antibiotic or whatever properties. I mean, that's a whole other topic.
And look into the many varied uses of baking soda.
Yeah, that's a good
baking
one too.
powder, whichever it is. I forget which one it is. I think it's baking soda, right?
Yeah, baking.
Wash your clothes with it, brush your teeth. I mean, you can use it for cleaning.
Yeah, it's like an extra level of cleanliness.
It's like 8 products in one.
Right. It's not only smell absorbent, but it also gets rid of the other particulates and so on. But let's go ahead and end this.
Yeah, I feel like we've kind of wound down there.
Yeah, it's been good talking. So we're probably up to about, I don't know, an hour 40, hour 30. I don't know after I cut it or whatever.
Yeah, about an hour 40. Yeah.
And I might insert some stuff, some other videos that I've talked about throughout the talk or whatever. But good to talk to everybody or whatever. I hope you got something out of this tonight. And Waza, I hope it was a productive day for you. I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, just trying to educate people on things, and especially people who aren't maybe as savvy as us, or you know. And I'm not trying to toot our horn or anything, but you know, people need to realize that you know, you don't need the day-to-day quote unquote comforts, air conditioning, power. You know, like we just talked about the showers. You don't.
Yeah, when you go to the grocery store, you look down the aisle and you see 40 different varieties of shampoo.
You don't need all that shit.
It's not necessary.
Exactly. So I hope somebody gets something out of all this.
If you haven't started now, get started and address the basics.
Yeah, get started now, and the main thing being like water and food, like we talked about.
Yeah, because it is possible, and I didn't mention this when we got on the topic of what is to come soon in the next year.
Mm-hmm.
There's a growing feeling that some things are going to hit the fan before the election, because that may be one way that they're going to try to stay in power, is for certain things to really hit the fan in terms right before the election. So you may have some, you know, October surprises that you're not going to like.
Well, yeah, and let me end this on a quote from the good old singer Sting, if you remember Sting.
Oh, absolutely.
In Europe and America, there's a growing feeling of hysteria, conditioned to respond to all the threats and the what it was at the something, I don't know, but basically even back then in the 80s when he wrote that song, it's a song of the Russians. I hope the Russians love their children too, or whatever. Mm-hmm. But basically that's where we're at again. You know, there's a growing feeling of hysteria across the whole world.
Yeah.
You know? And I hope the Russians love their children. I hope the Americans love their children. I hope everybody loves their children, and they do what's right for everybody.
Yeah, you know, the Native Americans used to say our responsibility was to provide and plan for 7 generations.
That's good. Yeah.
They ain't no joke on that, and they were serious about it.
Okay. Well, I'm going to stop it there. Peace out, everybody. Have a good night.
Goodbye.